I'll never forget the first time I heard her say it. Her voice was soft, almost casual, but the words hit me like a knife to the chest. You're so much like him. At first, I didn't even understand who she meant. But the way her eyes glossed over, like she was looking at a ghost standing right behind me, told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't seeing me. She was seeing him. And the truth is, that broke me a little inside. Because in that moment, I realized something I never wanted to admit out loud. I didn't want to be compared. I didn't want to be a shadow. I didn't want to be a reminder of someone else. I only wanted to be hers. But before I explain why those words mattered so much, let me take you back to how it all began. It started years ago, in the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew each other's names, where kids played on cracked sidewalks and moms waved from porches with tired smiles. My best friend lived just a few houses down, and his mom was the type of woman everyone seemed to admire. She was warm, always laughing, always making you feel like you belonged in her home. To me, she wasn't just my friend's mom. She was something different, something I couldn't quite put into words at the time. Maybe it was the way she listened when no one else did. Maybe it was how she made even the most ordinary days feel safe. Or maybe it was the way my heart always seemed to race a little faster when she smiled at me. Back then, I told myself it was just admiration, just comfort, just something harmless. But the older I got, the harder it was to lie to myself. Every time I walked through their front door, I found myself looking for her first. Not my friend, not anyone else. Her. And little by little, I realized that what I felt wasn't something I could brush off anymore. So when she looked at me that day, with those distant eyes, and whispered that I reminded her of him, I couldn't stop the words that spilled out of my mouth. But I only want to be yours. The silence that followed felt like it could crack the walls. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. For a second, the world stopped moving. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. And deep down, I knew nothing between us would ever be the same again. Because what started as innocent comfort was about to turn into something far more complicated. Something that would change both of our lives forever. But here's the thing, what happened next? That's where everything gets dark. And it's the part you're not going to believe. Before that moment, before the words slipped out and shattered everything, we were just two people connected by circumstance. She was my best friend's mom. That title alone should have been enough to draw a hard line. She cooked us dinners, drove us to school, made sure we stayed out of trouble. She was supposed to be the safe one, the person who felt like home when the rest of the world was a mess. But the truth is, she wasn't just a mother to him. She was a lifeline for me too. My home was nothing like theirs. My dad worked long hours and barely spoke at the dinner table. My mom, well, she was around, but it always felt like she was somewhere else in her head. I grew up in a house where silence was louder than words, and where love felt more like an idea than a reality. So when I'd walk into their house, it felt like stepping into a different world. The warmth hit you the second you walked in. The smell of food on the stove, the sound of laughter echoing through the halls, the way she asked questions that made you feel like your answers mattered. She treated me like I was part of her family. Sometimes, I even caught myself wishing I was. But that wish, it came with something darker. Because the older I got, the less it felt like I wanted her as a mother figure, and the more it felt like I wanted her as herself. I don't think she noticed it at first. Or maybe she did, and just ignored it. There were small things, like how my eyes lingered on her a little too long when she wasn't looking. Or how I would always volunteer to help her in the kitchen, just for a few extra minutes by her side. She'd smile, thank me, hand me a dish to dry, and it all felt so painfully normal. But inside, I was battling something I couldn't admit to anyone. Especially not to my best friend. If he knew what I was feeling, if he even suspected it, I don't think he would have ever spoken to me again. And honestly, I wouldn't have blamed him. That's why I buried it. I buried it deep. At least, I thought I did. But people can only hold secrets for so long. And sometimes, no matter how careful you are, they slip through in ways you don't expect. For me, it started with looks that lasted a second too long. A question that sounded more personal than friendly. A tension in the air that neither of us dared to name. And then, that day, the day she looked at me with those glassy eyes and whispered, "You're so much like him." I didn't even know who him really was back then, but I could feel the weight of it. Whoever he was, he mattered to her. He was someone she couldn't forget, someone I could never replace. Yet when I answered, when I told her I only wanted to be hers, I wasn't thinking about him. I was thinking about the one thing I had spent years trying not to say out loud. And now, I had said it. The question was, what would she do with the truth? The moment the words left my mouth, I only want to be yours. I wanted to snatch them back. Her face froze, her eyes widening just slightly before she turned away, as if the air itself had suddenly become too heavy to breathe. For a second, she didn't say anything. And that silence, it was worse than anger. I wanted her to laugh it off, to pretend I was joking, to save me from myself. But she didn't. She just stood there, her hands trembling as she clutched the dish towel tighter than she should have. Finally, she spoke. You don't know what you're saying. Her voice was low, unsteady, almost pleading. But I did know. I knew exactly what I was saying. And the more I looked at her, the more I saw the conflict in her eyes. The war between pushing me away and something else she couldn't quite hide. That something else was what terrified me the most. The days after were a blur of confusion. Around my best friend, I had to act normal, laugh at jokes, play video games, talk about school. But whenever she walked into the room, my chest tightened. She avoided my gaze, but I felt her watching when she thought I wasn't looking. There were moments when our eyes would meet, and it was like time slowed down. Neither of us said a word, but everything we couldn't say out loud hung between us, heavy and dangerous. And then, one night, it happened again. I had stayed late, helping clean up after dinner while my friend was upstairs. She reached past me to grab a plate, her hand brushing against mine. Just a simple touch. But the way she pulled back, like she had been burned, told me she felt it too. We both stood there, frozen, the air thick with something unspoken. Don't, she whispered, almost too quiet to hear. But the way she said it, it wasn't firm, it wasn't final. It was fragile, like a warning she wasn't sure she wanted to give. And that was when I realized this wasn't just my secret anymore. She felt it too. What neither of us knew was how long we could keep it from breaking everything apart. Because secrets like this don't stay buried forever. And soon, someone else was going to notice. From that night on, nothing between us was simple anymore. Every glance carried weight. Every word felt layered with meaning. And every silence screamed louder than anything we could have said. I'd sit in their living room, pretending to be focused on the TV with my best friend, but my mind was racing. She would walk past, her hand brushing against the back of the couch, and I'd catch the faintest look in her eyes before she forced it away. It was torture, wanting to know what she was thinking, yet fearing the answer. And then the whispers began. Not from her, not from me, but from him. My best friend. One night, while we were in his room, he said something that made my stomach twist. You know, Mom says you're like family. But lately, I think she likes you better than me. He laughed, but I could hear the edge in his voice. It wasn't really a joke. He had noticed something. Maybe not the truth, not yet, but enough to sense that things weren't the same. I brushed it off, made some sarcastic reply, but inside, I was spiraling. If he could see it, if he could feel it, then how long before he confronted her? Or me? The pressure kept building. I tried to pull back, to stop going over so much, but avoiding them only raised more questions. She noticed. My friend noticed. And one evening, she caught me outside before I could leave. Why are you avoiding us? She asked. Her voice was sharp, but her eyes were soft. Almost too soft. I swallowed hard. Because I don't know how to be around you anymore. Her lips parted like she wanted to answer, but no sound came. Instead, she stepped back, shook her head, and whispered, "This has to stop." But the way she said it, it didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like a confession. Days later, the storm finally broke. It was late, the house quiet. My best friend had gone to bed, leaving me in the kitchen, rinsing dishes. She came in, wearing that tired look she always wore at night. But there was something different this time, like she had made a decision. She stood in the doorway, watching me for longer than she should have. Then, in almost a whisper, she said, "You remind me of him because you really are like him." My heart stopped. The way she said him this time, it wasn't casual, it wasn't distant. It was raw, broken, as if the truth had been locked away for years and had just slipped out. I turned to her, my voice shaky. "Who is he?" Her eyes glistened with tears she tried to hold back. She took one step closer, then another. And finally, she said his name. The name that would unravel everything I thought I knew. When she said his name, I froze. It wasn't just any name, it was my father's. The room spun. My chest tightened as her words echoed inside me. making no sense, yet somehow making too much sense. She whispered that years ago, before I was even born, she and my father had been together. That I wasn't just like him. I might have been the reason their lives had torn apart. The truth was unbearable. The woman I had longed for, the woman I had secretly wanted to claim as mine, might already be bound to me by blood and betrayal. But before I could even process it, she said something that made it worse. Much worse. He doesn't know, no one knows. If your friend ever finds out, it'll destroy him. It'll destroy everything. I felt my stomach drop. Not only had I crossed a forbidden line, I had stumbled into a secret buried for decades, one that could shatter families and friendships in a single heartbeat. And now, the choice wasn't just about us anymore. It was about whether the truth could ever stay hidden. Because one wrong move, and someone else was going to uncover it first. The silence after her confession was unbearable. My heart pounded in my chest, my thoughts spiraling out of control. My father, my best friend, her. Every piece of my life suddenly felt like it was crashing together in the worst possible way. I can't, I whispered, my throat dry. I can't just pretend this doesn't change everything. She stepped closer, her face pale, her hands trembling. Please, you don't understand. It was before your mother. Before all of this. I buried it because I had to. But when I look at you, I see him. And when you said what you said, I couldn't stop it. It all came back. Her words broke and healed me at the same time. Part of me wanted to run. The other part wanted to stay, to fight for something I knew I could never truly have. That's when the sound of footsteps on the stairs cut through the room. We both froze. My best friend was standing there, half awake, his eyes narrowing as he looked between us. What's going on? He muttered. I couldn't speak. She couldn't either. The air was heavy with truths that could never be explained. And then he saw it. The look in our eyes. The tension we thought we'd hidden. His face twisted, confusion turning into realization. Wait, his voice cracked. You? With my mom. My stomach dropped. The secret I had sworn to protect was seconds from unraveling. But before I could say a word, she stepped forward. And instead of denying it, instead of pushing me away, she said something that shattered us all. He deserves to know the truth. About me. About his father. About everything. His father. The world tilted. It wasn't just my life that was tied to hers. It was his too. The family I thought I had, the friendship I thought was unbreakable, was all built on a lie. And now, standing in that dimly lit kitchen, with both of them staring at me, I realized the truth wasn't going to set us free. It was about to destroy us all. The kitchen that night became a battleground of silence. My best friend stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore, like the kid he'd grown up with had been replaced by a stranger. His mom stood frozen, torn between protecting him and admitting what she had kept buried for decades. And me? I felt like the ground beneath my feet had disappeared. Finally, he broke the silence. You're telling me my dad isn't my dad? She closed her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. He raised you. He is your father. But biologically, it's not that simple. Her words cracked something inside him. He stumbled back, shaking his head, his world unraveling in real time. For him, it wasn't just about me and her anymore. It was about his whole life being a lie. I wanted to say something, to fix it, to take the weight off him. But what words could possibly mend that? That night ended in chaos. He stormed out. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing. And I walked home under a sky that felt darker than I had ever seen, wondering if I'd just lost everything that had ever mattered to me. In the days that followed, everything changed. My best friend stopped answering my calls. At school, he wouldn't even look at me. I didn't blame him. How could he? The person he trusted most had been hiding the truth, and I had become the living reminder of it. His mom tried to reach out, tried to explain, but I couldn't bring myself to face her either. What I felt for her was real, but it was poisoned now, twisted by blood, betrayal, and secrets. Whatever chance we had at something more had burned away the moment she said my father's name. It hurt, but it also forced me to see something I hadn't before. I had been chasing a version of love that was never meant to be mine. Months later, I heard that he had finally confronted his dad. The fallout was ugly. Their family fractured in ways I couldn't imagine. And though it haunted me, I knew it wasn't my secret to carry anymore. The truth had its own way of clawing to the surface. As for me, I learned that some truths aren't meant to set you free. They're meant to teach you where not to lose yourself. I lost a friend. I lost her. But in that loss, I found a piece of myself I didn't know I had. The strength to walk away, even when my heart was screaming to stay. If there's one thing I've taken from all of this, it's that love, when it comes tangled in lies, doesn't heal, it destroys. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is let go of the person you thought you couldn't live without. Because maybe, just maybe, that's the only way to finally start living it all.